Hey everyone, welcome to the Gamble Ramble vlog. With you as always is myself, host and creator Glenn Archie Gamble. I am a 40 plus year career musician from London, Ontario, Canada. And this is a vlog about music, my career, rock and roll, pop culture, books, films, movies, just fun stuff. And sometimes I interview my celebrity musician friends. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're a return friend, welcome back. And if you're new here too, I can ask you off the hop to please subscribe. I would appreciate that. It's free and it really helps the channel out. So just click that little button. So today I wanted to talk about the English phenomenon that is Yungblud. He's a musician from London, from England. And he was born Dominic Richard Harrison. Excuse me while I consult Wikipedia to get facts straight. 5th of August 1997, a fellow Leo. 2 days after me, and several years. But I digress already. 1 minute and 7 seconds in. Anywho. Yeah, Dominic Richard Harrison, known professionally as Yungblud. Singer, songwriter, and actor. He put out a debut EP in 2018 called Yungblud, self-titled, followed by the first full-length album, 21st Century Liability. 2019, he released the second EP, The Underrated Youth, and the following year he released his second studio album, Weird! Which peaked at the top of the UK album chart and reached number 75 on US Billboard Hot 200. His third album, Yungblud, like his first EP, was released in 2022 and reached number 1 again on the UK album charts, number 45 in Billboard America. So he's from Doncaster, South Yorkshire, which is, South England. And, it's amazing to be born in 1997. And, it's like, I'd already been almost 10 years into my career at that point. And I forgot sometimes about aging and the effects of. But this young man, as you can see by the pictures, he's a very almost kind of glam rock looking rock and roll musician. And he's been in the press like crazy lately. If you don't know who he is, you're basically living under a rock, because he's been, appearing at the Ozzy Osbourne farewell concert in Birmingham, where there's a lovely clip I'll put in here of he and Ozzy giving him his blessing to go conquer the world. Check it out.
For you, conquer America. Like.
That's it, man. That's the goal. That's the fucking plan.
Gotta conquer America.
And then the world.
That's the next goal, baby.
Stop.
Just keep going.
Yeah, man.
Don't give in.
No, man, never. It's gonna be fucking epic, man. Love you all.
Also, more recently, he started another American tour last week, a few days ago, I believe, and he appeared on the Video Music Awards, the MTV Awards as they were previously called, in a really cool tribute to Ozzy Osbourne, backed by Nuno Bettencourt and a band, Nuno Bettencourt of Extreme, of course, where he duetted with Joe Perry and Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. Now, here's the thing with Yungblud. There's a lot of mixed reactions to this young man. Earlier in his career, to go back and watch some of his old videos or listen to some of his older music, it's a little more leaning towards pop. He plays guitar, and I'm assuming writes on guitar as well. But there's definitely a pop edge to his music, which is fine. I like good pop music. But image-wise, he was definitely a child of his time. Almost kind of pansexual, genderless performer. He would appear on stage in tutus and women's lingerie, and this is something that dates back to, Iggy Pop and Bowie, and, there's always been a lot of, that kind of, playing with that kind of gender rules and things in rock and roll. But before his recent, newer image, he was definitely very, I call it pansexual, multicolored hair, and as I said, frilly tutus on stage with fishnet stockings and heavy black eye makeup, which he has retained to this day. And, I went back and listened to some of the music, and it is good, it's just a little more leaning towards pop, as I said. So I think that's what happened. What has happened is, this young man has grown as an artist and as a person, and is probably being encouraged, I would think, by his management label to go after the rock market in North America. Because if you conquer America, you can conquer the world. Let's face it, it's true, especially in the music and film industry. So his more recent image, if you can see by the picture I'll put in here, is more tough, like black leather pants, shirtless. The guy's got a great body. He's in great fucking shape, but he's a handsome young man. Jet black hair, slicked back, long but not too long. Heavy black eyeliner and black eye makeup, which looks great. He looks like a rock and roll vampire. In the tradition of, Iggy Pop, Jim Morrison, a bit of Bowie in there. I think he looks really cool myself. Well done tattoos, artfully placed. He's got abs that I would fucking kill for, So his new music is more guitar based and has a heavier edge to it. And there's been people calling him out, saying that it's a deliberate move to win the rock audience. And I think that there's probably some truth to that, but I also have to say, so what? I don't know this young man's influences. But I do have to say, I saw an interview with him at the VMAs where the interviewer was talking to him about his love of Ozzy Osbourne. And there's famously, Ozzy Osbourne gave him one of his own gold crosses off his neck. He gave it to Yungblud. And then Yungblud had one made and gave it to Ozzy backstage at his farewell show. Very touching exchange. And Ozzy had, given this kid the stamp of approval. And apparently, he met the Osbournes through, if you watch the Osbournes podcast, as I do on YouTube, I recommend it. It's really entertaining. He met Kelly at a club and then basically got introduced to the family. And so this interviewer at the VMAs was asking him about his Ozzy influence. And you could see him get a little uncomfortable because she was like, what's your favorite track and favorite album and stuff? And he kind of looked like a little bit like a deer in the headlights. I could see his mind searching for an answer. When she asked him about songs, he started naming recent Ozzy songs that had been in the press, Patient Number 9, and the more recent recordings that Ozzy did instead of the classics, like Over the Mountain and whatever. So I'm telling you this for a reason, because I feel like Dom was not a kid that grew up with a guitar in his hand at home with headphones on, woodshedding and trying to play like Randy Rhoads. I don't even believe that Ozzy was necessarily an influence on him as a singer and performer at a young age. But again, that's okay too, because we all grow and change, right? He may have at some point, I think, deliberately turned his head towards hard rock, heavy metal music and took what he could from it, filtered it through his own system, and came out with his own sound. And I do like his music. If you listen to it, it's definitely rock. It's got lots of guitars and stuff in it, but it's a pop edge. But all the best artists have done this. So is it fake, or is it just how artists work? Like Bowie was the king of, I won't even say plagiarism, but appropriation. Taking things from different, art, theater, movies, music, putting it through the Bowie filter, and it came out as his art. So he strikes me as Bowie-like in that way, So, is he a true rocker? I think he's becoming a true rocker. I think that this leaning towards heavier music is a fairly new thing in his life, but I think that he realizes that rock and roll audiences are far more loyal than pop audiences. Pop audiences are just, here today, gone later today. Well, rock fans will stick behind you, and you can have a career in rock music. But one thing they can smell a mile away is insincerity. So I do believe he's sincere. You see this young man in interviews, and he's very, and in fan interactions too, he's very much eye to eye with the person he's speaking to. He gives them his full attention, and he's got a lot of charisma. When he enters a room, you notice him. He's very charismatic and has a very big personality. He's got the big rock and roll mouth, really nice, big, nice teeth. Like the Steven Tyler, Mick Jagger thing, right? I have to say that sometimes I feel like it's a costume he's wearing. Rock star, sometimes. I feel like he's maybe trying a little too hard in some situations. And the VMA performance is one of them. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. I did enjoy it, but I think it's sometimes the rock star cloak is something he puts on. It's almost over-exaggerated sometimes. It's almost like, yeah, baby, like Austin Powers kind of tongue-in-cheek, look at me, rock and roll cliche. And again, is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, I don't know. I think he's probably a product of his youth, right? A product of his times. He's, what is it, like less than 30 years old, right? So, he probably didn't grow up listening to a lot of Ozzy and Black Sabbath. Maybe he got into it later in life. I'm sure he listened to, like a lot of kids of his age, emo and pop and rap and even Spice Girls, whatever, right? His background is a little unusual too, because there's people saying that he's trying to have street credibility, but he himself claims he was never impoverished or anything like that. He came from a reasonably upper middle class, reasonably successful background and family. He went to stage school as a youngster, I think he even did some Disney work, if I'm not mistaken, TV or film. Don't quote me. So yeah, I think he is an amalgamation, is that the word? Amalgamation? Of influences put together in a blender and maybe nudged a little by management of the record company leaning towards rock. I don't know. I mean, isn't everything deliberate these days? I mean, just because he didn't grow up worshiping metal and hard rock and now plays it doesn't mean that it's phony. He seemed like to be a sincere performer to me, Now, getting to the performance, talking about the VMAs, he came out, I just watched it a couple days ago, I'm trying to remember. So he came out, and I think that he did Changes by Black Sabbath, which is the cover song he did at the Ozzy Osbourne farewell show, and brought the house down. And once again, it was a little, it went over huge. The stadium was, massively responded. I'm sure Ozzy could hear it back in his dressing room. And the kid brought the house down. He sang really well. I felt he was a little over emotive, like he felt like he was faking his passion almost. Not faking it, but trying to look passionate. And sometimes when people are doing that, it comes across as insincere. I don't think it was insincere. I think he meant it, but I think he was just maybe like William Shatner, the overacting in the moment, you know what I mean? But meaning it. Yeah, he came out, it was a medley, and he started out with Crazy Train, him and Nuno Bettencourt in the band backing him. Then he went into Changes, as we have already discussed. And then they closed with Mama, I'm Coming Home, which is Ozzy's famous ballad, written by Lemmy Kilmister, the great Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead. Rest in peace, Lemmy. Here's to you. Throw some Jack in there. It would be his favorite drink. But I digress again. Strike two. Anyway, so they shifted gears. Crazy Train and Changes. A really cool arrangement by Nuno Bettencourt, by the way. Key changes and stuff, and shifted down into Mama, I'm Coming Home. And for the second verse, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry appeared from the wings. And Steven Tyler, I thought he sounded great. I mean, the guy's going to be 80, in a few years. And he's had vocal surgery, but he's such a rock star. His presence was incredible. And Joe Perry, of course, the Toxic Twins, the two of them together, two of my heroes, they were great. Yungblud seemed a little guilty of a little of the same of, as I said about the Ozzy Osbourne farewell performance, maybe pouring it on a little thick, and you could kind of see Steven at times, he putting his arm around Steven and, singing into the same mic, and you could kind of see Steven kind of going like, what's with this kid? Not necessarily in a bad way, though. Again, that said, I don't think it was intentional. I don't think that he was being a prick, like, look at me, look at me. I think he was just enthusiastic, trying his best. Probably wanted to impress Steven and Joe, too, which I don't blame him for. Any rock musician would be thrilled to play with them. Period, right? So, here's what, talking about that performance. Dan Hawkins, who was the guitar player in the band The Darkness, a band I like, he and his brother Justin Hawkins, the singer and guitar player also, formed this band. And they've had, some great songs over the years. I Believe in a Thing Called Love. I love that song, Dan Hawkins came down really hard on Yungblud and criticized him publicly in the press. And he said, and this is the quote, makes me sick how people jump on this to further their own careers. And he's talking about the tribute to Ozzy that they did at the VMAs, right? You know, Dan Hawkins says, another nail in the coffin of rock and roll. Cynical, nauseating, and more importantly, shit. Makes me sick how people jump on this shit to further their own careers. What a bunch of bellends, which is British slang for cock and dickheads. And of course, they show Ariana Grande and all these pop stars in the audience. You can see they don't know the words, but they're trying to sing along and look cool for the camera. That, I won't lie to you, that struck me too as being a little like, what the fuck is this all about? It was a little like insincere looking. Pop stars trying to look metal. But then again, in my defense, every time I see that, every time I see an award show and I see these Pop-Tarts rocking out, they're trying too hard, right? It looks like they're trying to fit in with the rock crowd. And you know what? Whatever. I'm an old man in that respect, right? I'm a purist with hard rock, you know. This is all pretty harsh, you know, the way that Dan Hawkins, you know, just basically shit all over this kid. I mean, I think it's a little much, you know. And I like the Hawkins brothers. I follow Justin on his channel, you know, Justin Hawkins Rides Again. And as I said, I like the band. I think that maybe, though, he came down a little hard, you know. I do see the cynical side of me sees his point and thinks that maybe there's some truth to it. You know, this sudden gear shift to dressing in black, goth, heavier music, rocking out, and he's being associated with all these rock idols. Seems to be a little intentional and a little, you know, like a career move. But again, what's wrong with that? Watching this VMA performance and Ozzy's farewell show, we all know he passed away 7 weeks after. We're losing the giants. They're dying, you know, our heroes. I mean, I'm 57 years old. You know, I don't feel it. I feel 27 years old, but the heroes of my youth are slowly passing on. The torch needs to be passed to someone. So, you know, is Yungblud the perfect person to carry the torch? For Ozzy, Steven Tyler, all these people? It's not for me to say. You know, in the purest sense, he didn't grow up glued to his record collection like we did, you know, memorizing every lyric and learning every lick and loving his music and, you know, buying magazines and blah, blah, blah. At least as far as I know, he didn't. But you can't fault a young person for being a victim of their generation surroundings and society, right? He is what he is. He listened to what he listened to growing up. And even if he is intentionally making an effort to be a rock artist, I salute him for it, because there's a lot more fucking money in pop and hip hop and R&B than there is in rock and roll. And I believe his heart is true. You know, again, I think he's maybe a little guilty of overacting. And like I said, sometimes it seems like an ill-fitting costume he's wearing, and he's trying too hard to be a rock star. You know, it's kind of like a cliche of all the different parts you put together to form a rock star. That said, though, he also seems like a really nice young man. Very charismatic, handsome, good-looking dude with a great image. He does seem sincere, and he's talented. He can play guitar and sing well. And he's a good live performer. Again, he puts it on a little thick, I think, but that will... He'll learn some finesse as he gets older. So am I a fan of Yungblud? Yes, I am. You know, 2 thumbs up for me, because rock and roll is, as we know it, dying. The original generation of hard rockers are all riding off into the sunset, and someone's got to pick up the flag and carry it. So I salute this young man, Yungblud. If by any chance you happen to see this, I am a fan. Please don't take my criticisms the wrong way, but just as a professional musician, I see a few things and I feel the need to comment on them. That's what this channel is all about. But I think you're great, and I think that you have a bright future ahead of you. Just always remember what kept Ozzy Osbourne successful and loved for his entire career. Be honest and do it from here. That's why people loved Ozzy Osbourne. You know, rightly or wrongly, that man wore his heart on his sleeve, said what was on his mind, and lived what he believed in. And Roger Waters can go fuck himself. That's another aspect of this. You know, recently, Roger Waters basically wrote Ozzy off as a buffoon after he died. It was an uncalled for, unnecessary, and incorrect statement, you know. And I love Roger Waters. He's a fucking incredibly talented writer, performer. My God, the man's a legend, you know. But he stepped in it with this. He really should have kept his opinion to himself. It was unnecessary and it was unkind that he basically wrote Ozzy off as being irrelevant. I'll put the article in here if I can find it. So, Yungblud, go forward and rock. And Ozzy Osbourne, thank you for 5-6 decades of music. We love you, we miss you, and you've anointed this young man as part of the future of rock and roll, so therefore he gets my support, and I wish him nothing but best in the world. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for tuning in today to the Gamble Rebel vlog. I do appreciate ya. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And before we go, I just wanted to remind you once again, if you could please subscribe, click below. It's free, and it helps the channel greatly. And also, comment, like, share on social media if you'd like. And if you want to help the channel move forward, you can send me a super thanks, which is a financial gift if you're choosing. Or join my Patreon page. I'll put the link in the description. It's $5 a month Canadian, which is about $3 American. Think of it as buying me a beer or a coffee and to sit down and tell you road stories. I share stuff there that I don't share on my other social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. So if you could check that out to help me keep the train moving forward, I would really appreciate it. And I appreciate you. So rock and roll. Keep your stick on the ice, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. Until the next time.